Welcome back everyone, this is AVCA, and if you are new here or if you haven't yet, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and if you appreciate my content, hit that thumbs up button. That always helps me out. So today I'm going to talk about the Nikon F3, and just like with my previous review of the Nikon F2, I found that this camera has a huge following, a huge reputation, being called legendary, the best camera ever made, classic, all of the adjectives that I saw used to describe the F2 as well. It also has a cult following as well as people who really just don't like it. I think oftentimes that comes with anything that has been around for a long time, anything that was drastically different from its predecessor. Anything that's successful, you're gonna have a lot of love and a lot of hate. I think that's a good sign of the success that this camera has had. So as always with all my reviews, I'm gonna share with you the specs of the Nikon F3, a little bit of history about it, and then finally my experience with it. I hope you'll stick around till the end because that's when I share the photographs that I've taken with the camera, and that's when I share my thoughts and my experience, and maybe then you can make up your mind about it as well. So the team at Nikon wanted to immediately build on the success that the F2 had, and if you haven't yet, I will put a card up here somewhere or up here for my F2 review. Maybe you can go check that out after this video, but the success of the F2 led the team to want to build on that success and to come up with the next best thing right away. So Nikon brought in Giugiaro. I'm Italian and I'm butchering that name, so I'm ashamed of myself. And you can tell that he designed this camera because of the racing stripe here that is well known on the Nikon F3. He's a well-known designer of high-end race cars like Maserati and the DeLorean from Back to the Future. They decided to go futuristic and add in a lot more automatic features in the camera than its predecessors, which was a bit risky because photographers at the time were so used to having mechanical cameras like the Nikon F2 and the Nikon F. So with the new modern design of the camera and the automatic shutter, the F3 propelled its way past the success of the Nikon F2, and it became the choice of pro photographers even well into the 1990s. But is it all it's hyped up to be? What exactly does the camera bring to the table? What exactly is so great about it when people are saying it's classic, it's legend, it's all of those things? Is the F3 all it's hyped up to be? Well, that would be up to you guys, but let's look under the hood of the Nikon F3, so to speak, and talk about some of the specs. This can be a little bit boring for some of you guys, so just bear with me. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I think it's important. So the F3 has a titanium focal plane shutter. It has shutter speeds 1/8 of a second all the way up to 1/2000th of a second. It has timer, bulb, then it has X for electronic flash. It also has an automatic setting where it will automatically choose your shutter speed for you, which is great. That's something the previous Nikon Fs did not have. It has a backup mechanical lever, which will, if you run out of battery, you can then use that lever to actuate the backup shutter. When using the backup shutter, the default shutter speed is 1/60th of a second, which isn't too bad. And then when in aperture priority, like I mentioned before, the A setting on the dial that chooses your shutter speed for you so that you can prioritize aperture. When you're in that setting, speeds are 1/8 of a second up to 1/2000th of a second. The meter inside the camera is a silicone diode and it's center weighted. It's also TTL, so it's through the lens metering, which is great. So that means when looking through the camera, through your lens, it's metering what you actually see, which is always great. That's great for flash as well. The camera relies on 2 batteries, the LR44 batteries, which are pretty easy to find these days. And the ISO range is 12, all the way down to 12, up to 6400, which is great because you don't really need much more than that when you're shooting with film. There's an accessory shoe that you can mount onto the advanced lever like on all the other F cameras that will give you somewhere to mount your electronic flash. There's also a port here for an electronic flash, and the sync speed for flash is 1/80th of a second, which is also not bad. It's got a shutter lock lever, which is great. I love any camera that has that so that your shutter won't actuate when it's in the bag. I hate that, wasting frames. It also has a depth of field preview, which is great. A multiple exposure lever, a mirror lockup button. It even has a viewfinder blind so that you can keep this closed whenever you're not shooting, so that you can keep bright light, and let's say it's really sunny out, you can keep bright light from getting in there and possibly hitting your film. And as always, like all the other cameras, it has the Nikon F bayonet mount, and the F3 is compatible with AI and AIS lenses. It's not compatible with the pre-AI lenses, which is a bit of a bummer for me because I love my pre-AI glass. So those are the specs. I wanted to give that quickly so that if you are trying to shop for an SLR or thinking about the F3 specifically, I think those are things important when you are shopping for a camera. So now let's talk about my thoughts on the Nikon F3. Now that you know all the goodies that are inside of the camera, how did I like the Nikon F3? I'll be honest, I hated this camera. Let me tell you why. So I picked up the F3 on the suggestion of Bill Smith from Classic Camera Revival podcast. At this point, you probably know he's like my Nikon F pusher. He got me into the Nikon F2, and then once I was having trouble with the viewfinder in the F2, he recommended the F3 HP, which is high point, which is for the meter head that's on here. It has a huge viewfinder, which is great for people with glasses. So if you do get a Nikon F3 and you have glasses, I definitely recommend the high point, the Nikon F3 HP. And also I was having trouble carrying the F2. The F2 was pretty heavy, and with the grip I had on it, the third-party grip I had on it, and the pre-AI lenses, all of it together, it was pretty heavy for me. This camera is still heavy, but not as much as the F2. But the part that made me not like this camera when I got it was that I was already in love with mechanical cameras. That was my thing. I loved mechanical cameras. That was what drew me to vintage cameras. I was sick of all the automatic features of all the film cameras of the 90s that I grew up with, and I wanted mechanical cameras like the Nikon F. So when I saw the black, almost plastic feeling of the shutter advance and all of that, I was immediately turned off and a little judgmental. And not to mention, it doesn't really use pre-AI lenses, which are my favorite. I'm still a little bummed out that it doesn't use that. You can use them, but you have to shoot in stop-down mode, and that's not something I want to do. So those were really the downsides for me. I didn't really ever grab this camera until Elena was born. And then everything changed. My whole perception of this camera changed. The smooth shutter advance, there's something about that shutter advance that's so smooth. It's unlike any of my other cameras. It was like addicting. Taking pictures of Elena, which I needed to be fast to do, I found myself shooting roll after roll after roll of film, which is not good because it's expensive, but it was just so satisfying. The meter inside of it is so reliable. As I mentioned, the viewfinder, it's big and bright. You can still see that. You can still change out your viewfinder screens, which I love. I love the ones with the grid. Those are my favorite. You can still do all those things that you could do with the F2 and the Nikon F. And the built-in grip was great for me. It helped me. I didn't have to add a third-party one and make it heavier, so that was a great advancement as well over the F2. I loved that it has a film memo in the back, so you know what film you're using. So I was able to overlook the fact that it's automatic, and I mean, obviously I could still use manual mode, and I can overlook the fact that it relies on battery. And I haven't had a problem with that. It hasn't like run out of battery while I'm using it, and it got on my nerves that it's automatic, you know. The only downside to it would be that if the mechanics fail, that's it. I don't know. I'm not sure if it would be worth getting fixed or who I would send it to, but that's another story. And then the ergonomics of it, just everything is just located in a place where it's just so easy to just continuously shoot. It's just great in that aspect. You know, I found myself just constantly shooting with it, and which, like I said, became expensive. So I actually had to force myself to put it away because I was shooting too much film. This may even be the reason that some people really dislike the F3, because it is so easy to shoot with. It is automatic. It is futuristic, you know, in the sense that it does have that black plasticky feel, but it doesn't feel like a Canon EOS camera, you know, from the 90s. It's still very heavy and feels very substantial when you hold it. But I suspect that that is the reason some people don't like it, because some may say it defeats the whole purpose of film. You know, you want to slow down, but you're shooting so quickly with it and so easily. But in my opinion, now that I'm a mother especially, shooting quickly is something that is appealing to me now. So that leads me to my final thoughts on the Nikon F3. I think the Nikon F3 is the perfect example of not judging a book by its cover, so to speak. I full-on judged this camera by the way it looked, by the fact that it's automatic. Once I stopped judging it as a plastic bimbo from the 80s, and I opened my mind and realized it's an intuitive, reliable piece of kit that I can use and actually get good photos with. It became a very valuable tool to me, and I think I'll probably have this camera until it dies or I do, whichever one comes first. But I went from being a hater to a lover of it, and I think I strongly recommend that you give it a try. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I hope this has been of some help to you. If you're looking for a camera, if you're looking for an SLR, if you're looking for specifically the Nikon F3, I hope any of the information I provided was helpful. If it was, and you'd like to contribute to this channel, since I don't have a sponsor, I'll leave in the description below, I'll leave a link to a page on my website that will show you different ways you can contribute to the channel. That helps me out a lot. It's hugely appreciated. Any way that you guys help me out, even just a thumbs up, is hugely appreciated. I'm also going to leave an affiliate link down in the comments, so if you are looking into buying an F3, I'd appreciate it if you use my link. Small commission does come back to the channel, but other than that, I hope you'll hit that thumbs up. I hope you'll subscribe for more content, and let me know down in the comments, do you have a Nikon F3? Are you one of the people that totally loves it, or are you one of the ones that totally hates it? I always love hearing from you guys, and as always, make sure you're staying motivated and keep shooting.